the fight, yeah, bring on all the lightning. 'Cause I'm looking for a hero. Look inside the mirror, I find one. Oh, carry the hurt when it gets too hard. Pick it up.
Hi viewers, welcome to this episode of Inspired with Tequila Sean. I am your host, and joining me today is a wonderful friend, Nancy McGregor. Hey, lady.
Hi.
Welcome.
Well,
on this episode, we are going to continue the journey that we've been on, talking about healing through the hurt. And we are going to start out with hearing Nancy's story. We're talking about the hurt. We are talking about the pain that was caused from that hurt. We're talking about doing the work, which is the process to find your own personal healing. And then we are talking about how a culmination of those things helps to find the purpose. So Nancy is going to share with us today her story of courage and her powerful purpose. Nancy, how you been?
I've been fine. Thank you for that introduction. That was really nice.
Well, thank you. So you have a story. We talk about purpose. You and I met almost a year ago, I believe it was, and just became wonderful friends. And you were quite the quiet individual until I really got to know you, and found out that sometimes she's a talker, and you have a lot to say, and it is powerful and it is purposeful. And I'm honored to have you here because I remember the first time you shared with myself and some of our friends just a portion of your story about your son. And you shared with us so eloquently, and so I don't think you knew that you were really inspiring us. You just felt like you were just telling us what you'd gone through in life. And just the hush and the chills that we felt hearing your story, I remember thinking, and I don't know if I said this to you, but I said it to one of our other friends that was there. I said it to Lisa. I said, God has such use for her, and she doesn't realize it, and there's a platform for her. And here we are today, and I just want to, we laugh and we joke when we talk about, which part of our story do you want to share? You can take your pick and choose. And one of the things I think that we have connected on is our ability to find laughter in the things that we've gone through. You hear laugh to keep from crying. But just on a settled and a serious note, I would like for you to share with us your journey as it pertains to how you become the woman that you are and what it took for you to get here and the work that you're doing in that. So we'll start with the hurt. What would you like us to know?
Well, my childhood was an interesting childhood from an observational standpoint. I didn't really have one because abuse started in my family from I was 3 when it started. They took a year off when I was 12, and then it continued until I was 18. So there was no time, except for those 4 years that I've mentioned, that I was not being sexually abused. So that was not what you would call a childhood. And so I had to rise to an occasion of what do I do? I was told things. I was told I will be unloved if I tell anyone. And it was not just sexual abuse. It was physical abuse. It was violence. It was beatings. It was all kinds of wonderful and interesting things that children should never have to face. And so how do you decide when you're little to cope with all of this?
Yeah.
And I was told, your mother won't love you if she finds this out. And I knew that that was not true. And I knew that if she did find it out, she would be hurt. And I thought to my 5-year-old self when this occurred, the hurt stops with me. I will never let the hurt flow through me to someone else. I will stop it here. And I will be big enough to hold it.
And you were 5.
I was 5 when I can remember clearly thinking that, because I was upset and I had just gone through this thing, and this is what the abuser had said to me. And I was like, when I got off to myself, I was like, well, I could tell my grandmother, I could tell my mother, But if I do, they're going to be hurt because it was my grandmother's son and my mother's husband. And they're going to be hurt. And not understanding it wasn't my hurt to be giving to them, but at 5, that's what I thought. I will hurt them. So I will take the hurt and I will just keep silent. And I did. I stayed silent for the rest of the time.
Yeah. And that is such an echo to most of us, if not all of us, that have been abused in some way, shape, or form. We take on that role of being so young to have such an empathetic gene, to have this understanding of, number one, I heard you say, well, you just knew that your mother would not feel the way that he said. I think that was...
My mother loved me. My mother, I knew she was a wonderful mother.
Yeah.
She's passed on now, but she was a wonderful mother. And I knew that.
And you knew.
And I knew that was just, that did not ring true. As a child, children know things.
Yeah.
And they can't articulate them, but they know things. And I knew that was not true. That woman loved me. But I didn't want to hurt the only person that I knew for sure that loved me.
You. Absolutely. And so you choosing to keep silent, keep that to yourself, how do you feel like that impacted you? What did that do to you for your childhood, for your relationships?
As growing up, I understood the one thing that I thought I was a good person for not hurting others. That was true. But what I learned from all of that is that my mother, the abuser, my grandmother, everyone else came before me. I must consider someone else, not myself. So I understood saying no to my abuser didn't stop him. So my words didn't matter. My feelings, the crying, the tears, the please, no's, don't hurt, that didn't matter. So what I learned was I don't matter.
Yeah.
Everyone else is more important than me.
Yeah.
Everyone else matters, but I don't.
Yeah.
And as I continued to grow, I got to a point where I was 19 and I found God. And God kept telling me that I mattered, but of course I didn't believe him because I had imprinting from a very young age ensuring me that I did not. So I still, and through my faith, still other people mattered. What Jesus said mattered, not what I said. What the Bible said mattered. What people in my groups, in my church groups, they mattered, but I still underneath, and it was not always articulated that way, but it was just being kind to others, being careful of others, making sure that others are taken care of, and being nurturing, because that's what women do, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So that's how it was framed to myself, not that, gee, Nancy, you don't matter. That was not how it took. But so what I ended up with is all my life, everything mattered except me.
Except you.
And so I would do for other people, I would do for my husbands and children, but I would always put myself last. Until recently, I was talking with my husband about this, and he asked me a question, and in that moment, I had this vision of me as a little girl, and I looked around my house, and there were pictures of him when he was a little boy in his grandmother's yard, and there were pictures of him with his cousin, and there were pictures of his father, and there were pictures of the family. And there were no pictures of me as a child. There's no pictures of me as a little girl. There's no pictures of my family or the people that I loved. I have none of those in my house. And I thought, why is that? Well, of course I don't matter, number one.
Right.
But number two, every time I look at those pictures of me as that child, I'm reminded of all the story.
Right.
And so you want to push that aside because I've got things to do. And I realized the most horrible thing that I have ever let happen to that little girl was me continuing to tell her she does not matter to this day. Because I won't even look at her picture. I won't even put her in my house. The way my husband puts his pictures in the house. So I have dug out her pictures and she's going in my house because that little girl that lives inside of me to this day needs to hear from someone in authority.
Exactly.
And I am in authority now. that she still matters. And so that little girl that lives, and she lives in all of us. Every single abuse victim keeps that child inside them.
Yes.
And that child needs to be told that she
matter.
matters.
You said, we were discussing this last week, and that just was so profound. It hit me like a ton of bricks, because you said, Takia, I had to realize that if there was a child that I knew was being abused or neglected, or that she had come from that, would they not matter to me? Or would I do everything in my power to promote healing or positivity, or give them some sort of encouragement? And you said you realized that little girl in you were neglecting that little girl, when you know very well that if it was someone else. And I thought the world needed to hear that, because that is what we do. We tuck away. When you are abused, especially as a child, we tuck that away. A part of us dies, leaves, and we just let it go. And so I think that's something that all of us should revisit.
It's true. I would go to battle for a little girl that lived next door to me that I thought was being abused.
Exactly.
I would, don the armor and go for it and do everything to protect her, but I wouldn't do that for the little girl inside.
Of you. I think that's so special. We're going to take a commercial break. Sit tight. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Nancy McGregor, and I'm starting a nonprofit called the National Reimagination Alliance. And it's an alliance of upscale photographers and their clients that help gift photo sessions to help people coming out of rehab, or help people coming out of bad situations, or cancer survivors, to reimagine what their future will look like. So I'm looking always to add to my network of photographers, and I'm also looking for solutions and other partnerships with rehab centers, cancer centers, and other places that are needing assistance with helping their clients reimagine their future.
Bringing out the fight, yeah, bring on all the lightning, 'cause
Welcome back to Inspire with Takia LaShawn. I'm joined with my guest, Nancy McGregor, and we are on this journey of healing through the hurt. Nancy, we were talking about that beautiful story of how you realized the little girl within you, needed that time and that care and attention. And to me, it sounds like that's an ongoing part of your process, the work. We talk about the work. We understand the source of our hurt. We understand the pain and how we have began to deal with it. And then we talk about the work, which is the process, because it takes work. It really takes work to heal. And so you have amazing talent. You have an amazing story. You utilize the power, I always call it that platform, the power of your platform to begin to share and come into alignment with other women that are going through or have gone through what you have gone through. Your son, you have this phenomenal book here, which is the story you actually shared when we were walking that day. And you shared about your son. I'll let you tell the story because it's your story, but you shared a beautiful story of...
my son was born at 1 pound 9 ounces, and he weighed, he was 1 pound 9 ounces, and he was a half an inch taller than a Barbie doll. He was born at 26 weeks, and he was not expected to survive, but he did. And I rose to that occasion. Now I'm the mother of a disabled child, and doing the very best I can, pushing everything else aside, my own healing aside, because now I have an ill child that needs help.
And look at, I don't mean to interrupt you, but going back to what you said about if you knew there was a child that needed you, you would be right there. And this is your own son, and we have to learn to do this for the child within ourselves.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Well, this was an experience that changed my world and changed my son's. And we had written this book, and we're about to reissue this. This is currently not on the market, but it will be by this summer because we had an update.
Yeah.
But this is the story of what happened the day that my little boy was about 9 or 10 years old, and he came running in the house weeping, and I thought there was blood involved. I thought that he'd been injured in some way deeply, because the sobs were not what you normally heard, especially from a little boy.
Yeah.
And he threw himself on my legs. I was doing laundry, folding laundry, and he threw himself on my legs. And he looked up, he had very thick glasses, very prescriptions. He was legally blind. He threw them off his face across the room, and he looked up at me with this tear-stained face. And I'm going to get choked up talking about it.
Okay.
And he said, "Why did God make me this way?" Because he has cerebral palsy. He's legally blind. He has some learning disabilities. He has a normal IQ, but he has some learning disabilities. He's autistic. There's a multitude of problems. He was outside playing, and he was trying to throw a ball, and he couldn't throw the ball. He couldn't get his hands to work right. His fine motor skills are impacted by his cerebral palsy. And he just got so frustrated that day. He ran into me. He threw himself on me. He looked up to me, and he said, "Why did God make me this way? Why does God hate me? Why did he do this to me?" And I thought, oh, I'm going to destroy this child's life. I don't know what to say. I don't know how to answer this question. And I thought, growing up, as he was coming along, that one day he would ask me this question, and I had better come up with an answer, but I hadn't come up with one. I didn't know at the time why God let bad things happen to good people.
Right.
I didn't know that in my own story. What did I do as a 3-year-old, 5-year-old to deserve that?
This, yeah.
And I had no idea what to say. I was sitting there holding this child after I had checked him for blood and broken bones. I was holding this child, and lights were flashing in my head. I was panicking. I don't know what to say, and I sent up a prayer to God, please, please tell me what to say. And he did.
Yeah.
And what he said is in the story.
It's in that story.
And that's the story. And this book has been used in a juvenile court, given to juveniles to understand why sometimes they're in the situation. And so my son is 35 now, and he left our house that day a warrior because the answer that God gave him was good.
Yeah.
Well, the answer that God gave him through me answered my own question. Why did that happen?
Yeah.
And so, because I wondered, what did I do to get a disabled child? Why? Here I've had him, all of these things. Then when my son was about 11, 2 years after this, I was diagnosed with cancer. And I'm like, but by then I knew what the answer was. I knew then why God let bad things happen to good people. Yeah. And so I've kind of sailed through any other bad things that happen, including cancer. And because I had a disabled child, I needed to be available to him. So I stopped the corporate job, the 9-to-5 jobs, and became a photographer. And photography, it has always been my hobby. And I did makeup, so I was in the beauty side, Beauty for Ashes. When you said that the other day, that was a wonderful thing that resonated with me. So I ended up working in photography because I was freelance and could deal with my son.
Yeah. So tell us about that. Tell us about the work that you do in this, as we're hearing the work and the process. Your work, not only, like you said, you got your answer. The answer your son needed came from God, but it was dual because it answered your questions as well. And the work began, or it continued. And so you've written this amazing book, and I think that's just so wonderful to hear how it's been used in the juvenile system to help youth there, for us or other individuals to understand why and how. And I think that's so important because a lot of times we lose sight of that. We meet people and we come packaged as we are, and we don't, until we begin to unfold or unpackage or unbox the things that we've gone through and we get to know each other on a one-on-one, we don't know why a person is the way that they are or why they respond or act the way they do. And a lot of times those individuals don't even know,
That's true.
And so I think that's amazing that the badge is there. Your photography, your beautiful photography skills, amazing, award-winning. You're not only finding an outlet for you to continue your process, your work, but you are doing work with other women. Tell me about that.
Well, have done a book on poetry, and it has it's done well, and I like it. And the book, the photography, has won awards. And my photography was a means, as a hobby, and then it became a means of support for my son and I, and I did commercial work. I did food, I did architecture, I did products. I did not do people. I didn't do weddings. I didn't do portraits. I didn't do seniors and things like that. And but I started to get back into it after my mother passed away. And she had taken all of her photographs and thrown them away, and there were no legacy photographs. And I started looking at it from that point of view and started doing more portraits. But I leaned towards the artistic and the storytelling. I like to tell the stories of women and take pictures of their soul, as it were. But what happened with that is I discovered that women had not ever imagined themselves as these fantasy creatures. And so this is a particular story. This young lady, this is a fantasy. She's got wings. She was abused as a child. And so visualizing herself as a goddess with wings was something that gave her strength. Or whether it was this story, this is a takeoff on Ophelia.
Okay.
Or Ophelia, I had never, from Shakespeare, from Hamlet.
Okay.
And, but she died. This lady isn't dead. She's still.
I hope not.
she's okay. And the story is, you know, she's not gonna die. She thought about it, but she's gonna get out of the pond. So when you start taking pictures with a little bit of a fantasy element,
right.
You tell a different story. So what I have started is a nonprofit called the National Reimagination Alliance. And it's an alliance of high-end portrait photographers or fine art photographers. And what we want to do is offer a package that when we have someone that comes in to purchase her package, she'll have the option to buy one, give one. To someone coming out of a system. Maybe she's coming out of rehab. Maybe she's coming out of an abusive relationship. Maybe she's coming out of an illness, cancer. And she needs to reimagine who she'll be in her future. And that's where photographers can come in.
That's beautiful. Because photography, and the fine art photography, or just photography in general, the potential to harness the power of telling a visual story. And I think that, you know, I just had an experience myself with my videographer, and I did a photo shoot, and he released some work, and I cried. I mean, I cried when he was able to capture the essence of who I am. I saw me in the light that I wanted to see, and it's powerful. And so I think that's amazing. To reimagine, I like the name of your nonprofit, to reimagine as well. And what you're doing is offering women that ability to reimagine themselves, but really to harness and to pull who's really inside of there. So we are going to go ahead and wrap it up. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Sharing your story. And for more information on Nancy, make sure you follow us. And thank you for watching this episode of Inspired with Takia LaShawn. Want more inspiration and encouragement? Join me next week, Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Live, and hear more extraordinary women sharing their extraordinary stories. And be inspired with Takia LaShawn.
Bringing out the fight, yeah, bring on all the lightning. 'Cause I'm looking for a hero, look inside the mirror. I found one, oh, carry the hurt when it gets too hard. Pick it up, dust it off. When I fall down 11, I get up 12. Don't need nobody else. Yeah, I can save myself. Got burned, but
And to the fact that if somebody blessed me with a burgundy vehicle, I wouldn't take it.
And these are the things, these are triggers.
Triggers.
Because of the reminders.
The reminders. And so, at that, like again, I was raised in church. My grandfather was the head deacon of the church. He was the deacon that everybody knew, this wonderful father, this wonderful man of God. And I questioned God at that moment, like, how could I go to church and even be a youth minister and preach your word that they say is so keen and so important, but yet and still the same man that goes to church, to deacon, do all these things, could turn around and do it to me. And to know that our aunt was in another room and never stopped it. And so I built so much anger, impulsiveness, rebellion up from 12 all the way up to 15. I felt like that was a part of my life then.